I think that Israel as a country is dedicated to being a democracy and is one of our closest friends in that region.
Israel is our beacon of democracy in the Mideast.
We need a liberal democracy in that region.
One true democracy in the Middle East.
They're a democracy that we have sworn to protect.
Says horrible things about Israel, hates Jews.
Vicious, anti-Semitic screeds.
What if I told you that a foreign regime was interfering in the affairs of Western countries, working to take your freedom of speech rights away on specific topics and issues pertaining to that very foreign regime? Well, it's happening, but we don't seem to be as alarmed about it as we should be. The United States Congress have just passed House Resolution 246 condemning the BDS movement. That's the movement to boycott, divest, and impose sanctions upon Israel for its human rights violations and violations of international law. Not only this, but in more than 20 states in the US, anti-BDS legislation has been passed, and in some states, you are required to sign a pledge that you won't support BDS for government jobs, meaning Americans have lost their jobs for freedom of speech. In France, the UK, Canada, and in Germany, there have all been moves taken by the government and pro-Israel groups to combat pro-Palestine groups and the BDS movement. The same has been done by most of the mainstream media throughout their biased coverage of the topic, which is almost unprecedented in the West, and certainly so when it comes to our criticism of foreign regimes. The arguments against BDS painted as anti-Semitic, and this is the card Donald Trump has used time and time again to attack the likes of Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. But the fact of the matter here is that by the efforts of Trump, pro-Israel groups, and Israel itself, they are actually creating anti-Semitism where it did not previously exist. The reality is that whilst some anti-Semites do use Israel as a way to attack Jews, the majority of BDS supporters simply oppose Israeli policies and Israel's crimes against humanity, as documented by Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, Amnesty International, the United Nations, and many more leading and trusted organizations. When Israelis and supporters of Israel claim that the opposition to Israel's crimes is anti-Semitic, they automatically transfer all of those atrocities committed by Israel onto the hands of the Jewish people as a whole. For Israel and its supporters, it's a cheap way to attempt to silence opposition to Israel by painting anti-racist human rights activists as evil bigots. But this tactic does not work. All it does is cause harm to the life of human rights campaigners. If you see the thousands of violations of international law committed every single month by Israel, and its ongoing occupation, massacres of civilians, land theft, ethnic cleansing, stealing of resources, illegal annexations, Islamophobia, burning of churches, siege upon Gaza, etc., you don't stop opposing this when you are called a name. And when major political parties in the West, the mainstream media, Israel itself, and many others are arguing that criticizing Israel is akin to criticizing Jews, some people do internalize this propaganda. If you are criticizing Israel, even if your critiques are wrong, and even if what you are saying amounts to conspiracy theories about it, it is not anti-Semitic. It's an opposition to a regime and not to the Jewish people. It has nothing to do with them. Similarly, when we criticize the atrocities committed by Saudi Arabia, we are not being Islamophobic and we aren't being racist against Arabs. The arguments given against the BDS are that it wants to wipe Israel off the map and that it delegitimizes it, when this is not the aim at all. The arguments given against the BDS are that it wants to wipe Israel off the map and that it delegitimizes Israel. Well, this is not the aim at all. The aim of BDS is simply to force Israel to abide by international law, the legal obligations it signed itself, and to force Israel to grant Palestinians their mere human rights. Now, here's a question for you, and be honest with yourself. If you still oppose the BDS and still think our freedom of speech should be taken away or undermined on this issue, are you just a racist against Palestinians? Because think about it. If you don't support BDS, I'm assuming you don't support violent resistance to Israel by Palestinians either. So, what are Palestinians possibly to do? Can you name one thing that Palestinians can actually do? So Israel has taken over all of Palestine, ethnically cleansed the majority of its people, occupies the West Bank, steals the water, installs illegal settlements, implements laws to make Palestinians inside of Israel second-class citizens, besieges Gaza. All this and more whilst Donald Trump takes Jerusalem al-Quds off the table for them, stops funding UNRWA, legitimizes annexing West Bank settlements, legitimizes robbing the refugees of their rights, kicks the Palestinian Authority out of Washington, and punishes the only Palestinian representatives that call for a two-state solution. And Palestinians somehow are forbidden to even refuse to buy Israeli goods from illegal settlements as a means of boycott. So they can't use violence, which under international law they are allowed to, as a means of resisting occupation forces. They aren't allowed to ask for any deal other than exactly what Israel wants, and they aren't able to boycott and advocate against Israel. So again, what do you want the Palestinians to do? I'll tell you what they want the Palestinians to do. They want them to leave the land, allow Israel to kill them, steal their land, and occupy them, and then just to lay down and die. That's what Israel and its supporters want. And that's why they oppose BDS. They are racist and Islamophobic and hate Palestinians for who they are, what they represent, and where they are from. That's just the reality. If people like Trump and the far-right racist Netanyahu have the nerve to call us anti-Semitic, do not bow down to this. Laugh at it the same way you would laugh at a neo-Nazi for calling you anti-white. If we give in to their propaganda or start trying to justify our positions as not being anti-Semitic by accepting the terms of racist supporters of an ethno-regime, we only give breathing space to the ugly propaganda which associates the Jewish people with the filthy war crimes of an apartheid regime. The Palestinian cause is one of human rights and anti-racism. That's why I'm a supporter of BDS. No less and no more. And if it were the other way around and Jewish people were being occupied by Palestinians, I would be on the side of Jews to achieve their human rights and fight occupation. So let's not allow the racist propaganda of a state which is murdering people based upon a racist ideology tell us about why we are somehow anti-Semitic. The occupier, oppressor, and its supporters are not the ones that need their feelings cared for, and those in opposition are not those who are needing to justify their views. It's the supporters of a racist regime, which needs to be challenged on why they support the ethnic supremacy of one group over another group of people. The Palestinians are the ones who are being oppressed and killed. They are the ones suffering, and it's about time that we all recognize that.